finally makes an avoidant confront what they've lost. At some point, logic can't explain why they cannot get you out of their head. And when they can't hide behind logic anymore, they're left with the very thing they've been running from all along, their feelings for you. And that's when your silence becomes unbearable because they can't keep telling themselves that losing you was the right thing and that it brought them peace. The triggers that cause an avoidant to break their silence are the ones that make the loss undeniable. These realizations usually don't hit them all at once, though. They build slowly, and eventually the weight of staying silent becomes heavier than the discomfort of being vulnerable and reaching out. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the 7 triggers that make an avoidant break their silence and, yes, finally contact you. If you're new here, hi, my name is Lucia. I'm a dating expert specializing in helping you get your ex back or to get over your ex. And if you're not new, it means you're part of my no contact army. Welcome back. Always happy to have you. Okay, so the first trigger is realizing that you're no longer emotionally available and warm. They start to realize that they've lost access to something that they took for granted. Avoidants don't always understand how much they were relying on your emotional availability until it's gone. And one of my favorite quotes is, "The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken." So if they reach out and your energy is different, they're going to feel it. So this can look like you being polite but brief. If they bring up a shared memory, you don't lean in with warmth the way you used to. So you're not mean, you're not cold, you're just no longer emotionally invested in the same way. And that's more triggering than you being angry, because anger still shows that you're emotionally involved. Calm detachment tells them something much more unsettling. They no longer have the same place in your emotional world. And that's when the loss starts becoming real. The second trigger is when your silence becomes real because it's calm and non-reactive. And this kind of silence actually resets their nervous system because they expected you to chase them, they expected you to react, they expected texts asking why, wanting to talk, telling them how hurt you are, trying to fix things, trying to pull them back in. When they pulled away, that's what they expected. But when that response never happens and instead you're calm and silent, then what you're communicating is something very powerful. You're okay without them. And that's what makes this so activating, because your silence isn't just about the absence of contact. It's evidence that you're not falling apart. You're not begging. You're not trying to force a connection. And it tells them that, you know what, you could actually be done. And that thought triggers loss aversion in a way that your pursuit never could. So stop trying to pursue them after the breakup and stick to no contact, unless your breakup involved one of the 2 exceptions to the no contact rule, which I talked about in my video last week. I will put the link on YouTube in the upper right-hand corner. So a lot of avoidants, they don't fully feel the impact of your absence while you're still energetically chasing them. They feel it when your silence tells them that the bond may not be there waiting for them, and that makes them reach out to see whether you really are done. And by the way, if you need help decoding your ex's behavior in order to have your best chance to get them back, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and you can contact me at theartoflove.net/coaching, and we will send you the rates, and the direct link to click that is underneath every single video and podcast. Okay, the third trigger is seeing that you are doing well without them. When they see that you're genuinely happy and peaceful, it can be very triggering. They expected you to be struggling. They expected the loss to affect you more visibly. So when they see the opposite, it challenges this whole narrative that they built to justify the breakup or the distance. So if they told themselves that they were better off without you, or that you were too much, too needy, too emotional, then your calm and your happiness disrupt that story. And when they see you thriving, it can also hit their ego, because now it suggests that maybe you're actually better off without them. Maybe they gave up someone valuable. Maybe they weren't as central to your emotional world as they thought. Now, one thing I want to point out is that avoidants usually know when someone is posting things to make them jealous or to pretend that they're doing great. So this isn't something that you can fake. You genuinely have to be doing well. You genuinely have to be at peace. And that's going to create the kind of contrast that makes them start paying attention again. The fourth trigger is fear that you're moving on without them. So in the first few weeks and months after the breakup, they're going to assume that you're still thinking about them and the door is still emotionally open. And they may even take comfort in that. But as time passes and you remain in no contact like a good little soldier, then that certainty is going to start to weaken. And then a different thought starts creeping in. What if they're talking to someone else? What if they've actually moved on? What if someone else is now receiving the love, warmth, attention, and emotional access that they took for granted? And that's when the loss starts feeling urgent. That's when they start checking your social media more, asking mutual friends about you, or they start quietly looking for signs that they still matter. The fear that you've moved on creates this urgency that can override their usual avoidance of vulnerability. So in other words, the fear of losing you becomes bigger than the fear of reaching out. And that's a major shift, because avoidants usually stay silent as long as they think there's still time. And they reach out when they start feeling like time might be running out. And speaking of time, my app Silencio keeps count of the time that you've been in no contact. And it also has a panic button if you're about to break no contact. And of course, we have our thriving community where you can post about your issue and get answers from everyone else in the community. And the link for that is underneath every single video and podcast. And if you like to read, I also have a book. And you can get that book at nocontactsecrets.com, where you can read 2 free chapters before purchasing the book. All right, the fifth trigger is a memory that hits them unexpectedly. So a song, a place, a scent, a holiday, a restaurant, a joke, and it hits them so intensely that it literally bypasses their usual defenses. So they're not sitting there trying to miss you. They're not making some logical decision thing about you. It just happens. The memory comes up, and with it, the emotional experience attached to it. And that's why these flashbacks can be so powerful, because memories are encoded emotionally in the brain. So when one of those memories gets triggered, the associated feelings can come flooding back very quickly. And suddenly they're not focused on why they needed space or why the relationship felt overwhelming. Now they're back in the feeling of you, back in the atmosphere of the connection. And that emotional jolt sometimes becomes strong enough to make them break their silence. And yes, that can happen months later, and it can even happen years later. One of my clients, she heard from her ex after 18 months. So that would be a year and a half. Okay, the sixth trigger is when the distractions stop working. We all know about avoidance and their distractions. So for weeks and months, they might stay busy enough that they don't have to fully face what losing you actually means. So they throw themselves into work, the gym, travel, dating apps, friends, hobbies, constant movement, anything that helps them to avoid sitting long enough to feel the loss. But the good news is that distractions always have a shelf life. So eventually the noise quietens down. The rebound is not as exciting as they thought it would be. The dating apps feel empty. the busyness stops working the way it did in the beginning. And that's when they finally have to feel what they've been avoiding. And this is because distractions are a coping mechanism, not a healing mechanism. The loss doesn't just disappear because they haven't been feeling it directly. It's still there. It's just been postponed. And at some point, that accumulated loss is going to hit them all at once. They realize that nothing is making the feeling go away. So they miss you, and they can no longer outrun that. And that realization is what pushes them to reach out. And finally, the seventh trigger is when they feel lonely, but in a way that they can't explain. And this is one of the deeper triggers because there's a difference between the loneliness of being single and the loneliness of missing you specifically. So at first, they may just feel restless, empty, bored, or disconnected. But over time, that feeling starts to sharpen, and they start to realize that they're not just lonely in general, they're lonely because you are not in their life. And that kind of loneliness is uncomfortable because it breaks through all the distractions. They want to share something with you. They want to talk to someone who understands them in that particular way, and you're not there. And those moments reinforce the truth that they're not just missing companionship in general, they're missing you specifically, your voice, your energy, your understanding, your presence, your way of loving them. And when that recognition lands, then reaching out starts to feel inevitable. Now, these triggers explain why an avoidant may reach out. They don't automatically mean that an avoidant is ready for a healthy relationship, okay? So reaching out can mean they miss you, yes. It can mean they're nostalgic, or they feel your absence, they're lonely, curious, dysregulated, or afraid of losing access to you. But those things are not the same as being ready to show up consistently, communicate properly, and actually do the work. So yes, there are very real emotional triggers that can make an avoidant break no contact, absolutely. But your job isn't to sit there trying to force those triggers. Your job is to become emotionally steady. Don't over pursue. Stop trying to prove anything. Don't panic. And let your absence speak for itself. Because the fact is, when an avoidant finally feels the loss, it's not because you chased harder. It's because you stopped making it easy for them to take your presence for granted. So now I want to hear from you. How long have you been in no contact, and how is it going? And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos or future episodes. And finally, remember, love inspires, empowers, uplifts, and enlightens.